My name is Michael, and I used to think I had the perfect life, a steady job, two wonderful daughters, and a wife I believed I could grow old with. But everything changed the day she looked me in the eye and said, "You don't own me." That was her excuse for disappearing into the arms of another man. What followed was betrayal, heartbreak, and a decision that would tear my family in half. I didn't just lose my marriage. I nearly lost myself. But what she didn't expect was how far I'd go to take my life back. Let me tell you how it all began. We had two daughters, Emma and Grace. Emma was the headstrong one, a mirror of her mother, while Grace had my quiet demeanor but her mother's sharp wit. They were the center of our world. Laura handled the chaos of daily life like a general running a tight ship, doctor's appointments, school plays, holidays, you name it. I, on the other hand, found joy in the small things. Fixing leaky faucets, organizing backyard barbecues, teaching the girls how to ride their bikes. I wasn't flashy, but I was reliable. I believed that mattered. My favorite time of day was the early morning. Before the sun crept over the horizon, before the house began to stir, I'd sit at the kitchen table with my coffee in hand, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards. That silence, those few minutes of solitude, were sacred. They reminded me of what I was working for. A peaceful home, a loving family. That was my anchor. But lately, something had shifted. It started small. A missed kiss in the morning. A late night at work. Fewer laughs at the dinner table. Laura began smiling less, checking her phone more. When I'd ask how her day was, her answers became short, almost clipped. Busy, she'd say, or nothing interesting. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine, and if they did, it was brief. Almost like she was afraid I'd see something I wasn't supposed to. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Life wasn't easy. Bills, teenage daughters, careers, aging parents. It all added up. I figured we were just in a rut, the kind of dry patch every couple hits sooner or later. So I tried harder. I made her coffee in the mornings, picked up her favorite wine, even planned a small weekend getaway just for us. She thanked me, smiled politely, but her eyes were distant, like her soul was already somewhere else. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. Laura had always been independent, a force of nature. Maybe she just needed space. I wasn't the jealous type. I trusted her. At least, I used to. There was one morning, about a month before everything fell apart, that still sticks in my mind. I had woken up before dawn, like usual, but Laura wasn't in bed. The sheets beside me were cold. I wandered through the house, thinking she might be downstairs, maybe grabbing a late-night snack or scrolling her phone in the living room. But the house was dark, silent. She didn't come back until just before sunrise, slipping through the front door with her shoes in hand and her hair slightly messy. When I asked where she'd been, she said she went for a drive to clear her head. It was a lie. I knew at the moment the words left her lips. But I didn't press her. I didn't want the truth, because deep down, I already knew it, and admitting it out loud would shatter everything. I tried to bury it. I focused on work, on the girls, on anything that would distract me from the growing knot in my stomach. But the distance between us kept growing. She stopped touching me, stopped talking to me. Even her scent changed. She started wearing a different perfume, something musky, bold, and unfamiliar. She said it was a gift from a coworker. I wanted to believe her, but the lie stuck to her words like tar. One day, while folding laundry, I noticed something odd. A pair of lace underwear I'd never seen before. Black, with a small red ribbon. Laura had always preferred comfort. Cotton, simple, practical. This was different. I held them in my hands for what felt like an eternity, my heart racing. I asked her about them later that night, trying to stay calm. She laughed it off, said she bought them on a whim, that she wanted to feel sexy again. But her tone was defensive, her smile tight. She turned away before I could say anything else. From that moment on, the dread in my chest grew heavier by the day. I began noticing everything. The way she avoided my gaze, the new passwords on her phone, the sudden gym membership she never mentioned before. She started dressing differently too. Short skirts, heels, makeup. She told me it was just self-care, that she was rediscovering herself. But she wasn't rediscovering herself. She was preparing herself for someone else. I remember sitting on the back porch one night, the cool air brushing against my skin as I stared at the sky. The stars were dim, barely visible through the city haze. and yet they felt clearer than the woman sleeping inside my house. My wife, my Laura, was slipping through my fingers like sand, and I couldn't hold her no matter how tightly I tried. I still wasn't ready to admit what was happening, but the truth was circling me, clawing at my sanity. And even though I hadn't seen it yet, I could feel the storm coming. The weeks crept toward Father's Day and my birthday, which happened to land on the same Sunday that year. It should have felt special, a rare overlap that meant the day was meant just for me. But instead of excitement, I felt a weight in my chest growing heavier with each passing day. Laura had been growing more distant, emotionally absent, and physically elusive. Her smiles had turned into tight-lipped formalities. Her laughter, once vibrant and contagious, had vanished like smoke in the wind. I tried not to let it get to me. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, she was planning something nice. Laura had always been the type to organize surprise dinners or meaningful gifts. I held on to that hope like a life raft, trying to believe that she hadn't completely stopped caring. That despite the silence, the secrets, the late nights and cold stares, maybe, just maybe, she still loved me in her own way. On Friday night, 2 days before the big day, she came down the stairs wearing a short black skirt, sheer stockings, and red lipstick I hadn't seen in years. She looked breathtaking, but not for me. I asked if we had any plans I'd forgotten about. She laughed, said she was going out with co-workers for a girls' night. Last minute, she claimed. "Don't wait up," she said, already halfway out the door. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced the hallway, stared at the clock, listened for the sound of her car pulling back into the driveway. It wasn't until just before midnight that she returned, barefaced, hair tied up in a lazy ponytail, wearing a hoodie over what she had on earlier. She walked past me without a word, went straight upstairs, and locked the bathroom door. I heard the shower running for over 20 minutes. She didn't say goodnight. I didn't ask. I just sat in the dark living room, the cold of the night seeping into my bones, and wondered what I had done to become invisible in my own home. Saturday was no better. She barely spoke to me. No kiss, no good morning, not even a glance in my direction. The girls were busy with their own teenage chaos, and I didn't want to pull them into the tension. I tried to act normal, cooked dinner, cleaned up, even watched a movie alone on the couch. But Laura never joined me. She stayed upstairs, on her phone, behind closed doors. Sunday morning arrived, my birthday and Father's Day. I woke early as usual, hoping against hope that maybe things would be different. I made coffee, toasted a slice of bread, and sat outside on the deck as the sun rose. The air was warm, the sky golden, and for a moment, I allowed myself to imagine that I'd be surprised with breakfast in bed, a hug from my daughters, a card from Laura. Something. Anything. Instead, I heard hurried footsteps and the slam of the front door. "We're going to the beach, Dad," Grace shouted. By the time I ran to the window, their car was already pulling out of the driveway. I stood there frozen, the mug in my hand trembling slightly. No hugs. No breakfast. No happy birthday. Nothing. I got a call a few minutes later. It was my mother. "Happy birthday and Father's Day, sweetheart," she said cheerfully. "What are Laura and the girls doing for you?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "They went to the beach. Probably planned something for later." "That's odd," she replied softly. "Laura doesn't usually plan things like that on your day." "Yeah," I muttered, not trusting my voice. "I don't know what's going on anymore." To keep myself from unraveling, I threw on some clothes and drove to IHOP, thinking maybe pancakes and coffee might make me feel better. Big mistake. The place was filled with happy families, fathers with their kids, mothers snapping pictures, waiters delivering pancakes topped with whipped cream and birthday candles. I didn't last 10 minutes. I left without ordering, drove to a quiet park, and picked at a McDonald's breakfast sandwich while sitting alone on a bench near the lake. It used to be my favorite place to take the girls when they were little. We'd feed the ducks, race pine cones down the stream, laugh until our bellies ached. Now, it felt like a graveyard of memories, one I wasn't sure I was welcome in anymore. Later, I posted a simple photo of my lunch online, just a sandwich and a coffee, with the caption, "Happy Father's Day to me." I got a few likes, some comments. But then one comment stood out. "Hope you're having fun with the girls at the beach. Laura's mother." I stared at it for a long time. So Laura had posted pictures. Of the beach. Of the girls. Not a single word about me. Not a mention of my birthday. No tag. No thanks. No acknowledgement that I even existed. I ended up in a dimly lit cigar lounge by mid-afternoon, sipping a Miller Lite and nursing a $60 cigar I didn't really enjoy. A couple of older men invited me to join their card game. They were friendly, sharp-witted, and curious. One of them asked casually, "No kids today? Or is your ex with someone new?" That hit me harder than I expected. My hands froze, my heart pounding. "They're at the beach," I mumbled. "They forgot today's my birthday." The men exchanged looks. One of them leaned forward, voice low and certain. "She's cheating on you." I laughed nervously, but the sound came out hollow. "You don't even know her." He didn't blink. "I know the signs." My wife did the same. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. I left the cigar lounge that night with a weight pressing down on my chest so hard I could barely breathe. That stranger's voice, "She's cheating on you," repeated in my head like a broken record. Every detail suddenly took on a sinister meaning. The makeup, the new underwear, the late nights, the shower before bed, her sudden obsession with her phone. All of it painted a picture I could no longer ignore. When I got home, the house was dark. Laura and the girls still weren't back. I waited for hours, my mind spiraling through memories, trying to figure out where it had all gone wrong. I kept asking myself, was there a moment I missed? Did I stop paying attention? Did I do something to push her away? But the truth I kept circling back to was simpler and far more painful. She had made a choice. A deliberate, cold choice to step outside our marriage. By the time they walked through the door close to midnight, I was already sitting in the living room, lights off, beer in hand. Emma and Grace ran upstairs without saying much, tired from their day at the beach. Laura trailed behind, carrying a sand-covered tote bag and sunburn on her shoulders. She paused when she saw me. "You're still up?" she asked flatly. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her. And in that moment, I realized I didn't even recognize her anymore. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the mother of my children. This was a stranger wearing her skin. "I need to ask you something," I said, voice low and firm. She sighed and set the bag down by the stairs. "Can it wait until tomorrow? I'm exhausted." "No," I replied. "It can't." She hesitated, sensing something was coming. Slowly, she sat down across from me. Her arms folded, defensive. "Where were you Friday night, Laura?" She blinked. "I told you. I went out with coworkers." "I'm not an idiot," I said, leaning forward. "You left here dressed like you were going to a nightclub, came home hours later looking like you'd changed in a gas station bathroom, and didn't even say goodnight. Then today, my birthday and Father's Day, you take the girls to the beach and leave me here like I don't even exist. So I'm going to ask one more time, and I want the truth. Who were you with?" The silence stretched between us like a blade. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The way her eyes dropped, the way her lips parted but no words came. That moment, when the truth was louder than any lie, hit me like a punch to the chest. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself when I said, "What's his name?" Still nothing. "You won't even give me that," I said bitterly, standing up. "You won't even admit it?" Laura looked up at me then, her face pale and unreadable. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "It only happened once." I laughed, a sound so hollow and sharp it startled even me. "Once? You expect me to believe that?" "It didn't mean anything," she said quickly, voice cracking. I was confused, lonely. "I don't know why I did it." "But you did," I snapped. "You did it, Laura. You slept with someone else. You lied to me. You left me alone on my birthday and took our daughters to the beach like everything was normal. You didn't even text me." Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't find an ounce of sympathy. Not anymore. I had been patient, blind, trusting to a fault. But this was the line. She crossed it, and there was no going back. "I want a divorce," I said, my voice eerily calm. Her face twisted. "No. Wait. Please, Michael, don't do this. We can fix it. We've been through so much." "Exactly," I interrupted. "And you threw it all away. You didn't just cheat on me, Laura. You betrayed every single thing we built together." I stormed out of the room before she could say anything else. My hands were trembling as I climbed the stairs. I didn't go to bed that night. I couldn't. I lay on the couch with my mind racing. How long had she been seeing him? Was it really just once? Was he the first? At some point, I stood up, walked into the bathroom, and stared at myself in the mirror. My face looked older, heavier. A man worn down by years of loyalty and lies. Then another thought hit me, one I hadn't let myself consider until now. I had to know if Grace was mine. It was a horrifying, gut-wrenching thought, but I needed the truth. If Laura could betray me once, who's to say it hadn't happened before? I decided right then and there that during the divorce proceedings, I'd request a paternity test. I needed peace of mind. I needed to protect myself. The rest of that night was spent scouring divorce laws online. No mediation, no forgiveness, just a clean, firm end. By the time the sun rose, I had made up my mind. She had taken nearly 20 years of my life and burned it to the ground. Now, it was time to walk away from the ashes. The days that followed were a blur of pain, silence, and awkward civility. Laura tiptoed around me like I was a ticking bomb, and maybe I was. The betrayal hadn't just shattered my heart. It had detonated everything I thought I knew about my life. I couldn't even look at her without feeling the heat rise in my chest. And yet, I kept my distance, not because I was calm, but because I was dangerously close to losing control. I moved into the guest room. It was cold, barely furnished, but at least it gave me a wall between myself and the woman who'd broken every vow she'd ever made to me. I filed for divorce the same week. No mediation, no therapy, no working it out. She'd crossed a line, and I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. When I told Laura I'd contacted a lawyer, she looked stunned, as if she hadn't expected me to follow through. She cried. Of course she did. Crocodile tears and shaky apologies. She begged me to reconsider. It was just one night, Michael. Just one mistake. Please, don't destroy our family over this. I stared at her, my hands clenched at my sides. I didn't destroy anything. You did. What cut even deeper was how quickly the people around me turned. My own mother called me cold, said I should fight for my marriage like a real man. Laura's family? They circled around her like she was the victim. Her sister left me a voicemail saying, "Nobody's perfect, Michael. You're being too harsh." But the worst part was Emma and Grace. They didn't know the full story, at least not yet. Laura had gotten to them first, spinning whatever version suited her best. She cried in front of them, told them I was angry and abandoning the family. I could see it in their eyes. The way they looked at me, confused, guarded, hurt. They didn't understand why I was the one packing a bag, sleeping in another room, moving towards separation. I tried to talk to them, to tell them there were things going on they didn't know about. But every time I started, Laura would appear, hovering like a shadow, deflecting, interrupting. "Now's not the time," she'd say. "Don't put this on them." And just like that, the truth was buried under guilt and manipulation. One night, after a tense dinner where no one said a word, I asked Emma to come outside with me. We sat on the porch swing, the same one I'd put together when she was 6. She looked older than her 16 years in that moment, her eyes heavy with questions. "Dad," she said, "why are you doing this? Why are you leaving?" My throat tightened. "Sweetheart, there are things you don't know. Things I wish you never had to know." She turned her face away. "Mom said you gave up on us." Those words felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "That's not true," I said softly. "I didn't give up. I was betrayed." She blinked. "What do you mean?" But before I could answer, Grace opened the door and called us back inside. Dinner was cold. Laura didn't even look at me. I made a decision that night. I needed the truth on my side, not just emotionally, but legally. I called my lawyer the next morning and requested that paternity testing be added to the divorce petition. I didn't want to believe that Grace might not be mine, but the doubt was there now, poisoned into me by Laura's lies. If I was going to be called the villain, I at least wanted to be sure I wasn't also the fool. The next few days were hell. Laura cried often, loudly, dramatically, whenever the girls were nearby. She played the part of the heartbroken wife, while I stayed silent, unwilling to cause more damage than she already had. But the silence made me look worse in their eyes. The villain never needs to shout. He just needs to look unfeeling. And that's what I became to them. Then came the turning point. A letter. Laura left it on the kitchen table, handwritten, full of excuses and justifications. She confessed to sleeping with a 21-year-old coworker, claimed it only happened once, swore it was meaningless, said she told him to never contact her again. She said she missed what we used to have, that she regretted everything, that maybe we could still fix things. But her words didn't bring comfort. They brought clarity. She had admitted it. Finally. And that letter became my weapon, the proof I needed. Proof she couldn't twist or deny. Proof that everything I suspected was true. I scanned it, emailed it to my lawyer, and locked the original in a drawer. And then, I stopped answering calls. My phone lit up with messages from her family, my own mother, even the girls, telling me to listen, to be understanding, to let her explain. But no one ever asked me how I felt. No one asked what it was like to sit alone on my birthday while the woman I loved pretended I didn't exist. I was tired of being painted as the heartless one. Tired of being blamed for refusing to forgive something that should never have happened in the first place. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want sympathy. I just wanted peace. And for the first time in weeks, with divorce papers in motion and the truth out in the open, I finally felt like I was getting close to it. After I sent that letter to my lawyer, something inside me shifted. The air in the house still felt heavy, like walking through fog laced with venom, but I was starting to see through it. I stopped waiting for apologies. I stopped expecting understanding. Laura could sob all she wanted. Her tears didn't move me anymore. I'd already drowned in them. I began to leave the house early and come home late, not to avoid the girls, but to breathe. I needed time outside the war zone that used to be my home. My only peace came during my morning coffee runs, where I'd exchange a few warm, grounding words with someone who had no stake in the madness. Melissa. Melissa worked as a barista at the cafe near my store. She was sharp, red-haired, with kind eyes that always noticed too much. Every time I walked in, she had my black coffee ready before I asked. "Rough morning?" she'd ask gently. I'd give her a tight smile and say, "Every day lately." She never pried, but she always listened. And in that small act, she gave me something Laura hadn't in years: genuine attention. One day, after an especially tense call from my mother telling me I was giving up on love, I found myself lingering at the counter longer than usual. Melissa placed the cup in front of me, her hand brushing mine just slightly, and said, "You look like you've been carrying a mountain on your shoulders." I exhaled, suddenly realizing how long it had been since anyone had noticed. Over the next few weeks, we kept bumping into each other more often. A few minutes at the coffee counter became longer chats in the break room. Eventually, we grabbed lunch at the cafe on my day off. I learned she was a single mom. Her daughter, Lily, was 4, full of life, curious and fearless. Melissa had been cheated on, too, while she was pregnant, no less. She didn't mince words when she talked about her ex. "Some people aren't wired to love one person. But some of us are," she said, her eyes locking with mine. There was something steady about Melissa. She didn't try to fix me or tell me how to feel. She just sat with the pain, the way only someone who had known it intimately could. We weren't dating, not really, but we began spending more time together. And for the first time since my world had fallen apart, I started feeling human again. Then came the moment I never expected. It was a normal Thursday when a man walked into my store and applied for a night manager position. His name was Jeff. I didn't recognize it, but the moment I saw his face, my blood went cold. It was him, the same man I'd seen Laura with in her car that night. The same smug, pretty boy kid who'd unknowingly helped blow my life to pieces. He had no idea who I was. Something dark uncoiled in me. I hired him. He didn't know that I was watching him closely, that every move he made was under silent surveillance. On his second night, I waited until his shift began. Then, while the back lot was empty, I slipped a 40-inch television into the trunk of his car, a model I knew we had in stock. The next morning, I intercepted him in the parking lot as he was leaving. "Jeff," I said casually, "mind if I walk with you?" He hesitated but nodded. When we reached his car, I gestured toward the open trunk. "Did you buy this last night?" His eyes widened. "What?" "No, I have no idea how that got there." "Funny. We're missing that exact model from inventory." Panic crept into his face. He stammered, insisting we check the cameras. I smiled. "Already did. Looks like the system went down last night." His face went pale. I called the cops. He was charged with misdemeanor theft, fined, and slapped with community service. He never knew I planted it. No one did. But it was enough for me. Justice didn't always come in courtrooms or confessionals. Sometimes, it came in knowing the person who helped ruin your life now had a record that would follow him for years. A week later, I saw Melissa standing outside the office, her arms folded, eyes warm. "You free for dinner tonight?" she asked, smiling. I nodded. "I'm cooking." She laughed. "Just don't burn it." That night, I poured wine into 2 glasses and lit candles. Not for romance, but for peace. Lily colored at the table while Melissa set the plates. There was no tension, no accusations, no pretending. Just comfort. Just quiet. After dinner, Lily tugged on my shirt. "Can I show you my bear collection?" "Of course," I said, kneeling beside her. Her eyes lit up. Melissa sat back on the couch, watching us with something soft in her expression. I knew she saw it too, the difference. This wasn't healing from Laura. This was starting over. I hadn't known if I'd ever feel peace again. But in that moment, with a 4-year-old giggling beside me and Melissa's calm presence just feet away, I realized something. I didn't need to fix the past. I just needed to stop carrying it. Just when I thought I was regaining some balance, life reminded me how cruel it could be. It started with a call from my mom. Short, just her voice saying my name before the line went dead. Something in her tone didn't sit right. I called back immediately. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. That pit in my stomach, familiar, unwelcome, came roaring back. I called emergency services. The dispatcher told me paramedics had already been dispatched to her address. I didn't wait. I ran out of the office mid-shift, ignoring the startled look Melissa gave me as I blew past her. By the time I reached my mom's house, the ambulance was already pulling away. I followed it in silence, heart pounding, every second stretching like a lifetime. At the ER, a nurse met me at the door. She didn't make it. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. 1 minute. She was calling to wish me well. The next, gone. I sat in the sterile waiting room, numb, the buzz of overhead lights drowning out everything else. All I could think about was the last conversation we had. Her voice, faint but affectionate, asking if the girls had done anything special for my birthday. If Laura had treated me right. I hadn't told her the truth. And now I'd never get the chance. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Melissa. "Hey." I answered, my voice barely audible. "Bill, what happened?" "You just ran off." "My mom," I said. "She's gone." There was a pause. Then her voice came back, soft but firm. "I'm coming to you. You don't need to be alone tonight." I didn't argue. I couldn't. When I got home, she was already there, waiting on the porch with a blanket and a thermos of coffee. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me while I stared into the darkness. For the first time in weeks, I let myself cry, really cry. Later that night, I drove to the house I no longer called home. I had to tell my daughters in person whether they wanted to see me or not. I punched in the garage code and walked through the door like I had 1,000 times before. The house was quiet, empty feeling. Then I saw their bedroom lights. "Daddy," Emma called out as I stepped into the hallway. "What are you doing here?" Grace asked coldly from behind her. "I'm not here to fight," I said, voice cracking. "Grandma, she passed away this morning." They both froze. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Grace's tough exterior shattered. The grief hit them like a wave, and I stood there, feeling more helpless than I ever had. "I just thought you should hear it from me," I said quietly. Without another word, I turned and walked out. I ended up at the small lake where I used to take them when they were little. The water was still, the surface reflecting the pale moonlight. I sat on the old bench near the shore, clutching my jacket like it could hold me together. I didn't just cry for my mom. I cried for everything I'd lost. My family, my trust, my identity. I didn't even know who I was anymore. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was Laura and the girls. Their faces were pale in the moonlight, eyes red from crying. "How did you find me?" I asked, not turning to face them fully. "You never turned off, find my phone," Laura replied quietly. I didn't respond. "I'm sorry about your mom, Michael," she added after a pause. "Yeah," I said bitterly, eyes still fixed on the lake. "You regret that she died? Or that she died without making peace with me because of the poison you put in her ears?" She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. "I can't do this with you right now," I said, voice trembling. "I'll never forgive you for what you've done." I heard her retreating footsteps, and then Emma's voice. "Dad, we're sorry too." I turned and saw both my daughters standing there, faces soaked with tears. "Please," Grace whispered, "forgive us for how we treated you. We didn't know the whole story. Mom made it sound like you abandoned us." I looked at them, feeling a crack form in the wall I'd built around my heart. "She still says she loves you," Emma added. "She tells us all the time. Not enough to stay faithful," I muttered. "We get it now," Grace said, stepping closer. "We just want to be a family again." I pulled them both into my arms, and for the first time in months, I felt a spark of warmth. It didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me why I'd fought so hard in the first place. You're leaving for college soon, I whispered. I don't want to waste what little time we have left together. We don't either, Emma said, voice thick with emotion. As we walked back to the car, I saw Melissa's text lighting up my screen. Dinner's ready when you are. Lily's excited to see you. I glanced at my daughters. You're going to meet someone tonight, I said, smiling through the grief. And I think you'll like her. They didn't protest. They just nodded and said, in perfect unison, good. You deserve someone better. When we pulled into my driveway that evening, I was still carrying the weight of my mother's death. It hung over me like a storm cloud, grief tangled with guilt, regret, and the bittersweet comfort of having my daughters back by my side. But life, in its cruel timing, doesn't pause for mourning. Sometimes it piles healing and heartbreak together in the same breath. Missy's car was already parked outside. I had completely forgotten she was coming over for dinner. For a moment, I panicked. What would Emma and Grace think? Would they judge me for moving on? Was it too soon? Looks like you're going to meet Missy, I said, trying to sound casual. Both girls turned to me with raised eyebrows. Missy, Grace asked, smirking. As in girlfriend? Emma chimed in. Look at you blushing. Oh my God, Dad. I chuckled, shaking my head. We've only just started seeing each other. Don't start planning a wedding yet. Before I could even get out of the car, they bolted to Missy's front door, bombarding her with questions. I watched, unsure whether to laugh or cringe. But then I saw Missy open the door with her usual warm smile, and the girls practically pulled her into a hug. Girls, give her a break, I called out, jogging over. Let me introduce you properly. Missy looked a bit stunned but happy. She kissed my cheeks softly and whispered, they're adorable. A little intense, but adorable. You have no idea, I said, grateful for the warmth in her voice after the day I'd had. Inside, Missy had already prepared dinner, homemade pasta with garlic bread. The smell filled the house with a comfort I hadn't felt in months. The girls and Missy chatted like they'd known each other for years. Grace even offered to help set the table, while Emma was busy telling Missy embarrassing stories from when I was younger. I winced at each one, but didn't stop them. We laughed. We ate. For a few precious hours, we were just a family again, imperfect, but together. After dinner, I took the girls upstairs to show them around the house. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A fresh start. Emma walked into the guest room and sat on the bed. Can we stay the night? She asked. I blinked. I haven't even set up the guest room yet. We'll sleep on the couch, Grace offered. We don't want to go home tonight. My heart clenched. All right. But tomorrow, we'll go through some of Grandma's things together. I could use the help. They nodded without hesitation. Later, Missy and I sat on the couch with a bottle of wine after the girls had fallen asleep. She rested her head on my shoulder and asked, how are you really holding up? I hesitated. It still hurts. My mom. She was the only person who knew everything and still had my back, even when everyone else doubted me. Missy squeezed my hand. She would have been proud of you tonight. I wanted to believe that. The next morning, we met up with Lily at IHOP for breakfast. As soon as we walked in, Emma and Grace were completely taken by her. Within minutes, Lily was being twirled in the air and giggling like she'd known them her whole life. Watching them laugh, bond, and play, something loosened inside me. After breakfast, Missy and Lily left us to give me time with the girls at Mom's house. We spent hours sorting through her things, old photographs, letters, jewelry she'd saved from her own mother. Emma found an old music box and started crying softly. Grace folded one of Mom's shawls and said she'd keep it on her bed. But even amid the sadness, there was healing. Real, tangible healing. That night, while eating takeout pizza back at my place, Grace suddenly looked up from her plate and asked, Dad, are you in love with Missy? I nearly choked. We've only been out a few times. Emma raised an eyebrow. Okay, but she looks at you like you're a prince from a Disney movie. I laughed, but the girls didn't. Their faces turned more serious. Grace put her slice down. Dad, we owe you an apology. I looked up. For what? For turning on you, Emma said quietly. For shutting you out. Grace continued. Mom told us you didn't care. That you gave up on us. That your texts were just a legal tactic. We believed her. I swallowed hard. Do you believe her now? They shook their heads. Not anymore. I reached across the table and took their hands. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just trying to hold on to the version of the family you remembered. Emma whispered. We just didn't want to believe she was capable of hurting you. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. I didn't want to believe it either. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I stood on the back porch and looked up at the stars. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. My daughters were back. Missy was in my life. And maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. The day of Mom's wake came faster than I was ready for. I'd always known this moment would come, but I never imagined it would arrive in the middle of so much chaos. Grief tangled with betrayal, reconciliation laced with uncertainty. Still, I held it together. For her, for my daughters, for myself. At the service, I stood near her casket, watching as friends and family filed past, offering quiet condolences and handshakes that felt more like obligations. My girls stood beside me, somber and composed, their hands occasionally brushing mine. Missy stood on the other side, silently holding my grief with her presence. She didn't speak much, but she didn't need to. Then Laura arrived. She walked in alone, dressed in black, her eyes already red and puffy. I didn't expect her to come. Part of me hoped she wouldn't. But there she was, standing at the back, hesitating to move forward. I should have ignored her. But something about her standing there, isolated and uncertain, tugged at me. Mom would have wanted compassion, even if Laura didn't deserve it. I walked over to her slowly. She looked up, startled, maybe even hopeful. "You don't need to stand in the back," I said, my voice low but steady. Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." I led her to the front, offered her a seat beside the girls. Missy stayed where she was, understanding the complexity of the moment. Laura reached out to lightly touch my arm in gratitude, but I didn't return the gesture. Some things had changed forever. After the service, we gathered at a Polish restaurant Mom had loved. Laura kept to herself mostly, but I noticed her glancing at Missy now and then, her expression unreadable. At one point, she approached me quietly near the restrooms. "Michael," she whispered, "thank you for letting me be a part of this. You were part of Mom's life too," I said, keeping my tone even. She hesitated. "I know I destroyed everything. But you're holding it all together. The girls, this whole day? I don't know how you're doing it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The old me might have melted at her tears. But now I saw through them. Back at my house that evening, Missy sat at the table nursing a cold beer while I paced in the kitchen. Things went smoother than I expected, I admitted. Missy raised an eyebrow. "You're worried she's going to start something again, aren't you?" I nodded. "I don't trust her. Not after everything." Missy leaned over and took my hand. "You don't have to. You just have to keep moving forward." That night, we didn't make love. We just laid there, her body curled against mine, her breathing steady and calming. For the first time since the divorce began, I slept through the night. The next morning, we gathered for the funeral. Laura sat with the girls, but I stayed beside Missy. She held my hand in plain view, and for once, I didn't care who saw. During the final prayer, Laura whispered something from a few rows behind. "I'm not going to cause trouble. I just want to be included." I turned slightly. "Then act like it." After the service, everyone moved to the reception hall. I watched Laura wander the room, searching for a place to sit, her face tight with discomfort. I could have left her to figure it out. Instead, I approached her. "You're still family," I said. "You're welcome at the table." A single tear slid down her cheek as she nodded. "Thank you." As strange as it was to sit between the woman I loved now and the one I used to call my wife, I did it. For the girls. For the sake of peace. That day, I stopped waiting for closure. I gave it to myself. In the weeks that followed, life began to stitch itself into something new. Emma and Grace visited regularly. We shared dinners, laughter, and even the occasional argument, just like before, only realer now, stripped of illusions. Missy and I grew closer. Lily adored the girls, and they adored her right back. One quiet afternoon, Missy came into my office holding a small envelope. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Always." She smiled. "Does the company have any rules about dating employees?" I laughed. "If it does, I'm ignoring them." "I was hoping to ask you out," she said, handing me the envelope with her number and address inside. "Dinner. Tomorrow. Lily's joining." My heart felt lighter than it had in years. "I'm looking forward to it." That night, I left a voicemail for the girls, just like I always did. But this one was different. I told them about Missy, about how I was finally trying to be happy again, not just functional. I told them I missed them, loved them, and that I was proud of how strong they'd been through it all. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Laura. "I can't believe you're already dating. You're a fool." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I laughed. Not bitterly, not in pain, but with clarity. She didn't understand something fundamental. I wasn't mourning her anymore. I was moving on. And this time, I was finally free. Looking back on everything, I've come to understand that life doesn't just test your patience. It tests your principles. I spent years believing that loyalty alone could hold a family together. But the truth is, love without respect is a slow erosion of the soul. My mother used to say, "You teach people how to treat you by what you allow." And I finally understand what she meant. Forgiveness is noble, but it cannot come at the cost of your dignity. For those of us in the later chapters of life, it's easy to feel pressure to maintain peace, to avoid rocking the boat. But I've learned that protecting your peace sometimes requires walking away from those who disrespect it. I've also learned the power of starting over, not with fear, but with courage. Whether you're 40 or 70, it's never too late to rebuild, to find joy again, and to set an example for your children that strength and self-worth never expire. We may grow older, but we must never stop standing for what's right, even if that means standing alone for a while. Because healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about refusing to let it define your future.